The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to another version of Bite by Bite. He is Michael Coleman. He is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. They cover 35 counties here working with Feeding America. And this is a show about food banks. And we love the topics you bring to the table here, including defining food insecurity. This is, let me share a personal story with you because I've never had to go to a food bank until about 2 years ago. Yes, Tony Kurre almost went to a food bank. I had $16 to my name, and I knew I wasn't getting a check for the next 2 weeks. And I was doing everything I think I actually borrowed $1,000 from you, Michael. I think, do you remember? I'm just being totally honest.
No, I do.
It's amazing what you can do with a can of peanut butter. And I had my children. It was the holidays. It was one of the most difficult times of my life. I feel like it humbled me more than anything it humbled anything in my life. And, what are you going to do about that? And I can only think, I would have think that you're probably much more busier around the holidays because you want to give people the opportunities to have Thanksgiving meals. You did at the Jimmy Hill Mission, and certainly at the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, you want to do nice Christmas meals and things like that, and things catered to those particular things. But talk about food insecurities and how it differs through poverty and poverty for itself, and what it's like when someone can pay some of their bills, but quite frankly, they just don't have the food to put on the table.
Yeah, so we use that term food insecurity a lot, and a lot of people go, okay, well, they sometimes equate food insecurity with poverty, and they're not the same thing. So poverty is just a lack of, in a broad sense, is just a lack of sufficient resources. And poverty, although it usually manifests itself monetarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. A good example would be, we've talked before about social net, having a safety net, a social safety net, so that if you crash and burn, some people turn back to their parents, some people turn to siblings, some people turn to their church, whatever it is, to help them over a rough spot in their life. And the pantry is kind of like that in a way, but a social safety net kind of allows you to protect it. So we're not talking about just dollars, but food insecurity. You can be food insecure and not necessarily be at a poverty level, because food insecurity is about not only having enough, but it's having access to. And people say, well, how could you not have access? It seems like it boils down to you not having money because we live in cities that have plenty of grocery stores. Well, most of our territory is rural, and we have entire counties that don't have grocery stores. So Dollar General as a company is trying to step up. Of course, there's this old, you see this joke about there's even pictures of the moon, and then you'll see a Dollar General set up there because they have them everywhere. But Dollar General, we've met with their company, and they're really trying to set up, because they know that there's this food insecurity, and there's no fresh dairy, and there's no fresh produce, and there's no fresh, fruits and vegetables and all that. And so what the alternative is, so let's say you're 30 miles away from the nearest grocery store. So then to get fresh fruit is you're getting it down oftentimes at maybe the 7-Eleven, if there's one in your town. And typically it's not going to be as fresh. It's going to be very expensive. It's not going to be anywhere the quality typically that you're going to get in a Publix or Winn-Dixie or Walmart or something like that. So you end up having to shop at places that you're going to have a lot more processed food. Lots of times it's not going to be enough protein, dairy, produce, and all the things that you need. And especially if you've got children at home. Look, we all know that, thankfully there's a child nutrition program where they go to school and they can get a breakfast and they can get a lunch, because a lot of those kids go home in the evening. And there are no healthy options, and sometimes there are no options, period. They do not get food until they come back.
Do you find that is the biggest purpose or the biggest main cause for food insecurities, because they just don't have access to it as opposed to the poverty part of it?
I tell you, what I think you see a lot of is, and of course, when you look at the federal poverty level, it would amaze you how low that number is for you to qualify, especially like a family of four. I mean, anything over like $23,000 is considered. And you're sitting there saying, if I was single and making $23,000, I would think I was at the poverty level.
Sure.
And they're talking about a family of four. But there's so many people, let's say, that are trying to make ends meet. Let's say you make $30,000 a year, and there's just not as many jobs out there. So typically, the kind of jobs you get are more minimum wage jobs in rural environments, or you have to drive a long way. And just lots of times, at the end of the day, you're like, well, I could drive to the grocery store, but I don't have the gas to put in, to go there. So there's several barriers, and so it's just such a challenge for so many people to overcome that. And again, like I said, even if you can get access to it, it's at a much higher cost. So it's different. I think the vast majority of people, though, are people who are not making a lot of money. They may be above the poverty line or hovering around the poverty line, but they're in rural environments to where they just can't get to a store efficiently and effectively to get what they need.
We don't normally take emails on the show, but we're getting emails from a lot of things. I was checking some things while you were actually talking. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net here. This is called Bite by Bite. It's a great show. It's just about 5 or 10 minutes. We talk about food banks and everything the Heart of Alabama Food Bank does, which is wonderful work. She wanted to know, how do food stamps work? And I don't know. I have no idea. Can you explain how food stamps work, that whole situation?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, you'll hear it referred to as SNAP, which is it's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. I think that's what it stands for. But the idea is it's not for somebody to live on. It's to supplement what somebody has. And so the way it works is when you sign up, you get qualified based on your income level and based on how many children you have in your care. But even the most food SNAP benefits, food stamps that somebody can get in Alabama is like $250. And with the rising costs, you can spend $250 very easily if you have a family in one shopping trip. It is true that it's gotten a little bit more flexible, but again, if you're out in a rural environment, and so what happens is you're given a card, and so they just add that electronically to your card. And so you can go in, but again, it's not going to pay for gas to get you to a grocery store. It's not going to, see, so you're still out in rural environments or poor environments, and you go to a Dollar General, again, you're right back into the processed foods and you tend to get cheaper foods. And the cheaper foods are typically things that are not as healthy for you. And that's one of the things you combine the fact that so many people have that, that are forced to live in that, and the fact that they don't really have proper education as it relates to nutrition, and it tends to lead to obesity, where people don't know, hey, I'm eating a whole bag of cookies. You would think, well, everybody knows that that's unhealthy, but people in poverty, it's not something that's really valued as understanding how to read food labels, and so they don't do that. But I was just going to touch on just for a minute before we got off. On some of those root causes. We like to focus on those root causes because we don't want to just treat symptoms. We want to get in there and try to help people. But one of them, of course, some of it, like poverty is obviously a root cause of food insecurity. You're not going to have enough if you don't have it, but it's the low income that people have. People talk about living wages, and I get it when people say, I'm not paying somebody at McDonald's $15 to make me a hamburger. That doesn't require skill. I 100% get that sentiment. But I will tell you, it's a commitment that we made. I was just told that one of the Hyundai's tier one suppliers, that they're having trouble, temp agencies are having trouble getting them to pay over $12 an hour at a warehouse for warehouse work. We pay, because we choose to, we pay all the warehouse workers the lowest paid salary here on our site at Food Bank. And we pay $15.38 an hour plus a full slate of benefits, everything that goes in with that. But there's so many companies yet that still don't do that. And so you may have a job, you may go to work, but it's still not enough. Again, in some of these rural environments, sometimes some people have to drive 30 minutes just to make it to work, 30 minutes, 45 minutes just to make it to some of that. So it's not just, we can't just look at it as, well, if you're having issues or challenges, you need to go to work. People are working. People are fighting. People are trying to do two household incomes. But if they have a family of 2 or 3, they're still not able to get it. And I'll tell you something else. Think about this. It's just the lack of affordable housing. People go, what in the world does that have anything to do with it? Look, you try to find a house and you think, okay, there are dumps out there that you're paying $1,000 a month to. And you say, okay, this is the cheapest that I can, that's not just absolutely, that I'm willing to put my family in. It's the cheapest thing, but it's $300 more. So now guess what? That's $300 less disposable income I have to go for things like food. So you have to pay more for housing. And then that takes away the disposable income, and that puts you right back in a needy situation again. And the reason we say all this is because we want people to understand people don't need food banks just because they're lazy and shiftless and don't want to work. The third thing I'll say is chronic health conditions. We see this so much with our seniors when they get older. They start encountering things. If they don't have family to take care of them, they can't even drive anymore sometimes. So they're stuck at the house. And so even if they were close to a grocery store, they can't get out. They don't physically able to get out and shop. And so what do? They, maybe order something that can deliver to them. They take the easy way out, maybe order fast food, stuff that's not good for them. So there's just situations all over the place where we're really trying to help those overcome and address some of those barriers. But it really reminds me, boy, we really need to be thankful when we're not in that situation. Every time we can go into a grocery store and we can afford to get fresh fruit, vegetables, we can go home and we can cook them and gather around with our family. We're already so much more blessed than so many, not only across the world, but in our country.
Thank you, Mike. This is Bite by Bite.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.